This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. And the birthday boy for today, February the 10th, is a golfing icon. He is known for being #1 in the world for over 300 weeks in the 80s and 90s, winning 89 professional tournaments, including 20 PGA Tour events. And despite what people think, even though that he has had some chokery moments in his career with majors, he's won two. He won two British Opens in '86 and '93. The guy has been runner-up 8 times in majors throughout his career. And he is known for being the Great White Shark. Or the Shark, as he is, for what he did and stuff and all that. But he is actually the chairman of a company with a portfolio in apparel, interior design, real estate, wine production, private equity, and golf course design. And then he was named CEO of LIV Golf, of course, the controversial rival of the PGA, but it is what it is. So anyway, he is Greg Norman, the Shark from Australia, Mount Isa, Queensland, to be fair. So anyway, Norman would actually caddy for his mom at the Virginia Golf Club in Brisbane. And then he decided to turn professional by March of 1975. And would play a lot on the Australian and European tours. Yeah, he was mostly a European tour star because you rarely saw Greg Norman take part in PGA events unless it was a major. So anyway, he was huge. Well, he played in the European tours starting in 1976. 77, pardon. And then he actually won an event in Scotland at the Martini International. And then he would win the World Match Play Championship in 1980 and would win the first of 5 Australian Opens. Unlike tennis, the Australian Open is not a major event. In fact, Norman made his debut at the Masters in Augusta in 1981 and actually took 4th place, just missing out on Tom Watson by 3 strokes. But he looked good. He was the leading money winner on the European Tour in '82, and then he would join the PGA Tour, winning the Kemper Open in 1984. He actually ended up in the 1984 U.S. Open with a beautiful 45-foot dramatic putt. He tied Fuzzy Seller for the lead in the U.S. Open. And in those days, and I think it's still, in those days, they would have an 18-hole playoff to decide who won. Stroke play, though, not match play. And Fuzzy Seller crushed Norman by 8 strokes. But still, it didn't matter, as Norman would end up winning the Canadian Open in Oakville, July of '84. And then took 2nd place at the Canadian Open in '85. Anyway, Norman would put up 11 victories worldwide. He won 4 times in Australia, won 2 PGA events, the Las Vegas Invitation and the Kemper Open. But unfortunately, 1986 was when he was known for the Saturday Slam, as they call it, because he actually held the lead of all 4 majors through 3 rounds, aka 54 holes, and blew them. Well, blew them except for the Open, the British Open. At the Masters, he was up by 1, but he double bogeyed 10, and Jack Nicklaus was coming out of frickin' nowhere, as the great Ben Wright would say on the 15th hole. Yes, sir! And then Vern Lundquist would do the same on that 17th hole putt by Nicklaus. Maybe. Yes, sir! And Jim Nance would go, the bear is out of hibernation. So Norman actually missed a key par putt on 18, which would have put a playoff with him and Nicklaus. At the '86 U.S. Open at Shinnecock, he led after 3 rounds, but he only had a 75, and he was 6 strokes behind Ray Floyd. So at the British Open, he did win. He got a 63 on day 2 at Turnberry, and actually did well. It was amazing and all that. He ended up winning by 5 strokes, so Norman knew what he could do. And at the 86 PGA Championship, he was in the lead on the final day, but had a bad 76 and lost to Bob Tway by 2 strokes. So yeah, he was pretty impressive and all that across the world. In 1987, at the Masters, Norman actually had a 20-foot putt that would have won the tournament, but he missed over the left side of the cup. So he parred, and he was in a 3-way playoff with Larry Mize and Seve Ballesteros. So, sudden death meaning that, if one person had a worse score than the other, then he's out. Well, Seve ended up bogeying the first playoff hole, whereas Mize and Norman would par. So Larry Mize, for some strange reason, hit a 47-yard chip, went in the cup, and Norman missed his subsequent putt. So Larry Mize, for some strange reason, won the 1987 Masters. However, Norman did win a few Australian Open championships, which actually left him in the world golf ranking to number 1. He would be good in Australia and all that. So anyway, an inspirational story happened at the Heritage Classic in 1988, when a teenager who was sick by leukemia wanted to see Greg Norman and all that. He was supposed to be around for the first 2 rounds, but Norman managed to get the teenager to stay until the tournament's completion. Norman won the competition and then gave the teenager the trophy. Greg Norman missed a tough par putt in the 89 Masters on the final hole, which would have put him in a tie with Scott Hoke and Nick Faldo. Hoke would subsequently lose that thing by missing a 2-foot putt, which would have clinched it, and Faldo won. Norman looked pretty good, getting into a playoff at the 89 British Open with Mark Calcavecchia and Wayne Grady. Unfortunately, Norman kept hitting the bunkers, and Calcavecchia won the Open. So, anyway. Norman ended up winning the PGA Tour running list in 1990, which would be amazing. Anyway, Greg Norman actually had a slump and turned to swing coach Butch Harmon for help. And it worked. The mechanics worked, and Norman ended up winning the 1993 British Open, putting up a 64 on the final day, which actually was a record for best final round score by a winner, until Hendrik Stenson in 2016 did it. So Norman did his job. And then at the Players' Championship, the tournament for the top 30 golfers for the previous year, he put up a 24 under par round, 6 strokes better than any other previous winner. Norman would finish runner up at the 95 U.S. Open and 3rd at the 95 Masters, so he was starting to pick up everything. He shocked a lot of people by going back to number 1 ranking in the world over Nick Price. He was named PGA Player of the Year in 95. Unfortunately, though, Norman and his first major in 96 was disastrous. He looked pretty good. He started with a 63. He had a 6-stroke lead on the final day, and for some unknown reason, he flubbed it. He put up a 78. Worst of all, Nick Faldo put up a 67, and Faldo ended up winning the tournament by 5 strokes. Norman was still second, I think, right? Yeah. Anyway, it was just amazing and all that. In fact, at the 2008 British Open, he actually was the leader after 3 rounds by 2 strokes. Unfortunately, he would lose. But still, at 53, he did set the record for being the oldest leader in a major championship after 3 rounds. But Tom Watson would do him one better the next year at the UN Open at 59. Norman would have lingering hip and back issues why he didn't play on the Champions Tour. But he has such a great legacy and all of that in Australia and the European Tour and, of course, the PGA. Winning the money list in 86, 90, and 95. He was inducted to the World Golf Hall of Fame in 2001. Yeah, he's got that company with golf course designs, winery, estates. He's a big venture. Unfortunately, though, LIV Golf has kind of ruined his reputation a little bit, in effect. You know. Yeah. So, anyway. Yeah. So Greg Norman was going to be part of the USGA championships in 2015 for Fox Sports alongside Joe Buck. Unfortunately, though, Norman's performance sucked. So he was replaced with Paul Asinger. In fact, Greg Norman had a romance with British tennis player and proctor of A Question of Sport, Sue Barker, but then he met Laura Andresse, an American flight attendant, and married in 81, having 2 children, Greg Jr. and Morgan Lee, a daughter. They were divorced in 2006. Norman would actually marry Chris Evert, the legend Chris Evert, on Paradise Island in Bahamas in 2008. That was a year before I went to the Bahamas. But unfortunately, they were divorced after 15 months. Norman would actually marry an interior designer in 2010 and has 2 grandchildren. Well, anyway, Norman was hospitalized with COVID-19. Lots of people were. But anyway, yeah, he won 20 times on the PGA Tour, including 2 Canadian Opens in 1984 and 1992. Sorry. Got ahead of myself there. He won 2 majors. I mean, yeah, he did have some chokery in the majors, but hey, at least he wasn't like Colin Montgomery and without a major. He won 2, so I mean, dude did do quite well. So why dwell on that? Maybe I have, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.